Growing up, my life was what many would call a fairy tale. My name is Evelyn Harrison. I was born into the Harrison family, one of the most influential families in our city. Our name was always in the papers for one event or another, but behind closed doors, we were just a regular family. My father ran Harrison Industries, a massive conglomerate with its fingers in everything from tech to fashion. I spent my childhood in large mansions, attending posh schools, and going on extravagant vacations. But despite all that, I never felt truly connected to that lifestyle. I enjoyed simple things, like reading a good book or having heartfelt conversations with close friends. During one of our family events, I met Daniel. He was different from the people I was used to. He wasn't from a wealthy family. In fact, he was there catering for the event. His laughter was genuine, and he had this light in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in a long while. "Hey, you're Evelyn, right?" he asked, handing me a drink. I nodded. "Yes, and you are?" "Daniel," he replied with a smile. "I work with the catering team. This is a big gig for us." We started talking, and it felt like we had known each other for years. Our conversations were simple, genuine, and heartfelt. He introduced me to a world outside my privileged bubble. A few months into our relationship, I introduced him to my family. My father, always the businessman, asked, "What do you do, son?" "I'm a caterer, sir," Daniel replied confidently. My mother, always the gracious host, said, "It's good to meet you, Daniel. Evelyn has told us a lot about you." After some time, I met Daniel's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. They lived in a modest house surrounded by lovely neighbors. Mrs. Thompson hugged me the moment she saw me. "Oh, Evelyn, we've heard so much about you. Welcome!" Mr. Thompson added, "Daniel never stops talking about you. It's good to finally meet the girl who stole our boy's heart." As our relationship grew, I would often use my father's money to treat Daniel and sometimes gift something to his parents. It felt good to share my blessings with someone I loved. The morning everything changed began like any other. I was sipping my morning coffee when my phone rang. Seeing my father's name flash on the screen, I answered cheerfully, "Good morning, Dad." There was a pause on the other end before he replied, his voice heavy with concern. "Evelyn, I need you to come to the office, now." The urgency in his tone caught me off guard. "Is everything okay?" "Just come. I'll explain when you get here," he responded, ending the call. Confused and worried, I quickly dressed and headed to Harrison Industries. The office was buzzing with activity, but not the usual energetic kind. There were hushed conversations and many concerned faces. The receptionist, usually so chirpy, gave me a sympathetic smile as she directed me to my father's office. Upon entering, I found him sitting behind his massive desk, papers scattered everywhere. His face was pale, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Dad, what's going on?" I asked, my voice filled with worry. He took a deep breath, clearly trying to find the right words. "Harrison Industries. We're declaring bankruptcy." My heart felt like it dropped to the floor. "What do you mean? How did this happen?" "We've been facing losses for a while, Evelyn. I thought we could turn things around, but we're out of options. Our debts have caught up with us." I sank into a chair, trying to process the news. Our life, as we knew it, was changing. Returning home, I hesitated at the door, thinking of how to break the news to Daniel. When I walked in, he sensed something was wrong immediately. "Evelyn, what happened?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I took a deep breath. "Harrison Industries is going bankrupt." Daniel looked stunned. "But how?" "We've been facing losses. I had no idea it was this bad," I admitted, tears forming in my eyes. He wrapped his arms around me, trying to comfort me. "We'll get through this, Evelyn, together." But things moved quickly after that. Our posh apartment, the one filled with memories of our love, was the first thing we had to let go of. My father's assets were frozen, and suddenly, the lavish lifestyle I had always known vanished. "We'll have to move in with my parents," Daniel said one evening as we sat among packed boxes. "At least until we figure things out." I nodded, swallowing my pride. "It's just for a short while," I told myself. But little did I know, the real trials of our relationship were just beginning. The safety net I had always relied on was gone, and now We had to navigate the world together, without the cushion of wealth to soften the blows. Moving into the Thompsons' house was a stark contrast to what I was used to. Their home was warm and cozy, but much smaller than the sprawling spaces I had grown up in. But I reminded myself that it was only temporary. At first, everything seemed fine. Mrs. Thompson would cook delicious meals, and Mr. Thompson would often share stories from his youth. However, as days turned into weeks, I began to notice a change. Simple things, like the way Mrs. Thompson would watch me when I took an extra serving of dinner, or how Mr. Thompson would turn off lights in rooms, even if I was still using them. One morning, as I was setting the breakfast table, Mrs. Thompson commented, "You know, Evelyn, back in our days, we would only use one type of jam for breakfast, not 3. Helps save money." I looked at the 3 jars on the table, suddenly feeling embarrassed. "I'll keep that in mind," I replied softly. Daniel started to change too. He wasn't the easygoing, jovial person I fell in love with anymore. He would snap at small things and often come home from work visibly stressed. One evening, I tried to talk to him. "Daniel, is everything okay at work?" I asked, noticing how tired he looked. He sighed heavily. "It's just stressful, okay? We need money, and I'm trying to do everything I can." I reached out, trying to comfort him. "We're in this together. Maybe I can look for a job too?" He pulled away. "Maybe you should. It's high time." It stung. I wasn't used to this version of Daniel, but I swallowed my feelings, thinking he was just stressed. One Saturday, as I was cleaning our room, I overheard a conversation between Daniel and his parents. "She doesn't understand the value of money, Ma. She's lived a silver spoon life." Mrs. Thompson replied, "I've noticed. She needs to adapt, Daniel. We can't keep supporting her lavish tastes." Mr. Thompson added, "She needs a reality check." I felt like I had been slapped. They thought I was being a burden. Tears filled my eyes, but I kept quiet. The once warm house started feeling cold and unwelcoming. Every action of mine was scrutinized, every decision questioned. The people who had once been so accepting were now judgmental. Despite the increasing tension, I tried my best to fit in. I took up a job, started contributing to the household expenses, and even cut down on personal expenses. But no matter what I did, it never seemed enough. Evenings that were once filled with laughter and stories now became silent. The television would play in the background, but the atmosphere was always tense. Simple joys, like celebrating birthdays or anniversaries, became a thing of the past. It was clear that the financial strain was affecting not just our lifestyle, but our relationships too. I often found myself reminiscing about the old times, wishing things could go back to the way they were. But as each day passed, the divide only grew wider, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that the worst was yet to come. It was a few months into our stay at the Thompsons' home when Mr. Thompson's birthday approached. In previous years, this day had been marked by a simple family dinner at home. However, this year, they decided to celebrate at a nearby restaurant, inviting me to join them. I felt a mix of hope and anxiety. It was a chance for us to bond as a family again, away from the confines of the house. Maybe things could start to improve. Maybe this dinner could be a turning point. On the evening of the celebration, I made sure to dress modestly, not wanting to give any room for negative comments. As we entered the restaurant, I took in the familiar ambience of a place I had visited many times before. Back then, under different circumstances. The waiter led us to a reserved table. I noticed the patrons, some glancing at us, recognizing me from the old days. The thought made me slightly uncomfortable, but I pushed it aside. We settled in, and menus were handed out. I glanced through, noting the prices. Back when my family was affluent, such numbers would have been insignificant. But now, every dollar counted. Wanting to be considerate, I decided on a relatively inexpensive dish. Daniel spoke up. "I'll have the steak, medium rare." It was one of the pricier items on the menu. His mother chose the lobster, while Mr. Thompson opted for a full 3-course meal. I felt a bit surprised, but said nothing, waiting for my turn to order. As I was about to speak, Mrs. Thompson interrupted. "She'll have the garden salad and tap water." I was taken aback. "Actually, I was thinking of the chicken." Mrs. Thompson's voice had a sharp edge. "The salad is plenty. We need to be mindful of our expenses." I felt humiliated. My cheeks turned hot, and I could feel the eyes of nearby tables on us. Daniel chimed in, chuckling. "Yeah, Evelyn, can't always get the fancy stuff anymore." My heart sank. This was the man I loved? The man who once promised to stand by me through thick and thin? Before I could muster a response, Mr. Thompson added, "You should be grateful. Some people don't even get bread." Their laughter echoed in my ears, and a heavy lump formed in my throat. I felt like a spectacle, humiliated in front of an audience. With all eyes on me, I finally found my voice. "When my family was doing well, I shared everything I had with all of you. And now, when times are tough, this is how I'm treated?" Mrs. Thompson scoffed. "It's about time you learned the value of money." Daniel looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Mustering all the strength I had, I said, "I may not have the money I once did, but I still have my dignity." I stood up, leaving the table, the restaurant, and the whispers behind. The dinner, which I had hoped would be a turning point, had turned into a disaster. But it was also an awakening. I realized that while money could be lost and regained, some relationships were damaged beyond repair. And as I walked out into the cool night, I felt more determined than ever to find my way out of this mess. Morning rays streaked through the room, and with a heavy heart, I made my way downstairs. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee was a stark contrast to the cold atmosphere that greeted me. There, sitting around the breakfast table, were Daniel, his father, and his mother. The previous night's events still fresh in their minds and mine, the silence was palpable. Eager to break the tension, I decided to address the elephant in the room. "I understand last night was uncomfortable for everyone. Can we discuss it?" Daniel's mother scoffed. "Uncomfortable? That's one way to put it. It was downright embarrassing, Evelyn." His father chimed in. "What were you thinking? Making a scene in a public place? And over something as petty as a dish?" Daniel looked at me, his eyes void of the warmth they once held. "You could have taken it up with us privately." I was hurt, I defended myself, trying to keep my emotions in check. "When I saw that you all intentionally ordered the cheapest dish for me, it felt like a slap in the face." "It's just food, Evelyn," Daniel said dismissively. "No, it's not just about the food," I countered, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "It's about respect, understanding, and love." I turned to Daniel, searching for any trace of the man I fell in love with. "Do you even love me, Daniel? Or was it always about the money?" He hesitated for a moment, then with a smirk replied, "Money is a significant addition to love, isn't it?" I felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. The weight of his words, filled with cynicism and devoid of any emotion, hit me harder than anything before. And to add salt to the wound, his mother added, "You were never a good fit for our family, always spending without thinking. Now you're just a freeloader." The hurt was too much to bear. The walls of the house, which once felt welcoming, now seemed to close in on me. Without another word, I turned away, my heart heavy, realizing that the love I thought was unbreakable was built on a foundation of convenience and materialism. Tears blurred my vision as I drove the familiar route to my parents' home. Every turn, every tree, brought back memories of a life that now felt worlds away. I wasn't sure how my parents would react, but I needed the comfort of home. The driveway looked the same, lined with the roses my mother loved so dearly. As I stepped out of the car, the front door opened, revealing my mother's worried face. "Evelyn!" She rushed towards me, pulling me into a tight embrace. Her warmth was an immediate solace, and I allowed myself a moment to just be held. Pulling back, she cupped my face, her eyes scanning for answers. "What happened, my love?" I swallowed hard, recounting the events of the past few months, ending with the disastrous dinner. She listened intently, her face a mixture of concern and anger. "Oh, Evelyn," she sighed, "you deserve so much better. I thought they loved me. I thought Daniel loved me." She brushed a strand of hair from my face. Sometimes, adversity reveals people's true colors. We were interrupted by the sound of my father's footsteps. He had a newspaper in hand, an amused expression on his face. "Is that my daughter I hear?" he said, feigning surprise. "Dad," I chuckled through my tears. He enveloped me in a hug, then held the newspaper out to me. The headline read, "Jackson Enterprises, from the brink to booming." "We're back on track," he said with a smile. I looked at him, shocked. "But how?" He chuckled. "Turns out the financial crisis wasn't as severe as we thought. With some smart moves and a bit of luck, we've not only recovered, but are thriving." I blinked back fresh tears, this time of relief. "Why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged. "I didn't want you to worry. Besides, I wanted to see who truly cared for my daughter, money or no money." My mother shot him a look. "You and your tests, John." I laughed. Typical dad. We spent the evening reminiscing, the warmth of my childhood home providing the comfort I so desperately needed. As night fell and I lay in my old room, I realized that while I had lost a partner in Daniel, I had regained something far more valuable, my self-worth and the unwavering love of my family. No amount of money could replace that. The weight of the recent events left an indelible mark on my soul, but it also gave me a newfound clarity. With renewed determination, I made my way back to Daniel's parents' home one last time, a suitcase in one hand and a folded newspaper in the other. Daniel, caught off guard, looked at me. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" "Ending this charade," I replied calmly, handing him the divorce papers. His face went pale and he stammered, What is this?" "Exactly what it looks like. I'm done, Daniel." His mother, with a smug look on her face, chimed in, "Good riddance. We knew you'd come to your senses and leave our son. It's for the best." Suppressing the urge to snap back, I unfolded the newspaper, handing it over to them. The headline gleamed, "Local business tycoon's company makes remarkable comeback." Daniel's father took the newspaper, reading aloud, his voice quivering. After facing potential bankruptcy, the company managed to not only stay afloat, but has also seen unprecedented growth in the past few weeks. My gaze never wavered. "You were so eager to label me a freeloader. It turns out life has a funny way of showing us who truly is shallow." I left the house, with no intention of ever looking back. Over the next few days, my phone was inundated with calls from Daniel, messages full of regret, apologies, and pleas for a second chance. And just when I thought I had heard the last from them, postcards started arriving at my parents' home. Picturesque landscapes, with scribbled messages from his parents, each bearing the same desperate sentiment. "Forgive us." But their words meant nothing. The pain and humiliation they had put me through were still fresh in my mind. One evening, after yet another call from Daniel, I decided it was time to put an end to this. Answering the phone, I said, "Daniel, I've moved on. Your calls, your parents' postcards, they mean nothing. We had our time, and it's over." The line went silent for a moment before he whispered, "I'm sorry, Evelyn." But apologies weren't enough. I was done giving chances. It was time to rebuild and focus on myself, far away from the toxic web of deceit and conditional love. My phone buzzed with a message. It was from Jenny. "Hey, heard there's a new art gallery opening downtown. Want to check it out?" I quickly typed back, "Absolutely. Let's go this evening." The gallery was brimming with people. The art ranged from vibrant paintings to intricate sculptures, each piece telling a unique story. Jenny and I moved from one exhibit to the next, soaking in the creative atmosphere. At one particular painting, a depiction of a phoenix rising from the ashes, I felt an odd connection. It mirrored my own journey. Jenny, noticing my fixation, commented, "It's beautiful, isn't it? The idea of rebirth, rising from adversity." I nodded. "It's symbolic. Reminds me of, well, everything." Later, as we grabbed a bite at a nearby cafe, Jenny looked thoughtful. "You know, there's this workshop next week. It's about rediscovering oneself, finding one's passion. Want to give it a shot?" My initial hesitation was evident, but then I thought, why not? "Sure, let's do it." Over the next few weeks, the workshop became a transformative experience. I dabbled in different activities, finding solace in painting. It became a therapeutic outlet for my emotions, each stroke reflecting my innermost feelings. One evening, after a particularly intense session, the workshop instructor approached me, Your work, Evelyn, it's exceptional. Have you considered showcasing it? The idea had never crossed my mind. No, I haven't, but thank you. He smiled. Think about it. Your art tells a story, and it deserves to be shared. Days turned into weeks, and soon, my small home studio was filled with paintings. The once unpacked boxes now contained art supplies. The transition was evident, from a woman scorned to an artist reborn. My father, ever the supportive figure, suggested organizing an exhibition. And with a little persuasion, I agreed. The opening night of the exhibition was a blur. Friends, family, and even strangers admired my work. The Phoenix painting, inspired by the gallery visit, was the star attraction. The evening concluded with a surprise. The workshop instructor approached, holding a check. A buyer, Evelyn, for the Phoenix painting. Stunned, I stared at the figure. It wasn't about the money, but the validation. My journey, my pain, my rebirth, it had resonated with someone. As the days settled and the exhibition came to a close, I realized that life was full of unexpected twists. But with each downfall, there was an opportunity for a new beginning. My past with Daniel was just that, in the past. I had found my passion, my calling, and for the first time in a long time, I was genuinely happy. Life had come full circle. From pain to passion, from despair to hope, it was indeed a new beginning. And I was ready to embrace whatever came my way.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons. leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. "Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. "It's still working hours." Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.